how do you prioritize self-care in your life? And what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So it's not always easy, as you guys know. But you really just have to first look at what do you need to feel the most alive, to feel energized, to feel good and feel like you're thriving. And then those are the things you have to make non-negotiables, and you have to set boundaries, and you have to prioritize. So for me, for example, I go to bed really early. Like I'm a really boring grandma. I act like a 90-year-old woman and I love it.
I love that.
But I mean, I'm like passed out most times by 9:00 because I put my 7-year-old to bed at like between 8 and 8:30, and then we just like pass out together. But I do that because first of all, I know I need sleep. So that's really important to me. And then I get up at 5:30 in the morning and go to the gym first thing. And whilst, and it's weird. My body now naturally wakes up at 4:30 in the morning. Sometimes I'm like, who have I become? What is this? But, that is because I own a construction company. So my phone is ringing for sure by 7, sometimes at 6 o'clock.
As soon as the sun's up, probably.
Yeah, it is literally. So, I mean, I've been at the gym and people are texting me. I'm like, oh, come on. But I mean, so if I can get a workout in and be done by 7, I know I got it done, because if like for me, I get lazy later in the day or things come up or I get tired, it's like, I will not work out at 2 or 3 p.m. It's just not going to happen. I know that. Yeah. I will make every excuse in the book to not make that happen. So starting my day off with time for me, then naturally I'm more energized. I'm in a better mood because now, I've moved my body, and that just flows through the rest of the day. So, I mean, there's things like that. You really just have to prioritize and find the time. I have friends that get up at like 4 a.m. to do some of this stuff, and they're like, they love it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's for them.
Yes, you said some key things there. For them, find that time that works for you, whatever that looks like, and make it a non-negotiable. Those are the things that are the key for consistency, the key for it continuing to be that part of your life. And it's going to look different for everybody. I mean, you talked about you and a friend getting up early. I am not a morning glory. I have tried many times throughout my life.
And that's okay.
Exactly. And I had to accept that. Like I had to accept that I can't go this way. But if I do this, like if I get up slow and get my coffee in me and, give myself like, I still get up I don't now because my kids are grown, but during that season that you're in now, I got up at 5:30, but I didn't go right into my workout. I did other things too to allow my body to come alive. Yep. Then, do the workout. I had to play with that and find that. And, I point that out because it's not going to look the same for everyone, but that non-negotiable piece and that feeling fresh piece are key to how you show up in your day. They're key. And it's that value piece. So at what point did you know that you use the word non-negotiable? When did this become true for you? When did you realize I am worth this?
I think I've done little pieces and parts of it kind of sporadically throughout life. But now, I started my company in March of 2020. I also worked another full-time job until April of 22. So for literally years, I was working 2 full-time jobs, building this company, being a mom, being a wife, being a friend, being all these things. Right. And I finally just really realized what my time is worth. Like if you're a high achiever, you're a dreamer, you're trying to do all these things, you're never going to get there unless you do these things. Like when you hear about these really famous, successful people, they do create boundaries, or maybe they don't start work till 10 a.m. because they ease into the day, or they build around, they do time chunking or time blocking, right? Like you and everybody, like you said, is totally different, but you have to kind of get to know yourself enough to say, these are the things I need. This is maybe the time of day when I'm thriving. This is the time of day when I'm like, have lower energy. So maybe don't plan that stuff for them or for that time. Right. Yeah. But the more you take on, I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't do these things.
You've mentioned boundaries a couple of times. Talk to me about setting boundaries, healthy boundaries, what they look like for you, and what your journey with that has been like.
Sure. So I'll give an example of work and personal. So for work, I have bankers and insurance people coming out of the woodwork to try to quote, have coffee with me and see how they can support me, which is great and kind. Right. But I, back in the day when I started my company, I would meet them for coffee and then realize they just want me to switch to their company, obviously.
Right.
And now I just kind of
benefits
know.
them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, yeah, you're still trying to sell your business here. And I don't have time for that. Like, I just kindly say no. Yeah. I'm not switching banks. I'm not switching insurance companies. Like, that is a waste of my time. I know what my time is worth now. So I say no to things like that. Or, if certain events, like if I don't really feel passionate about it, or like if I'm not going to go meet a client or potentially gain a new client or whatever, then I say no if it's not going to really move my business forward. If I'm just going to go, that's again a waste of my time. Yeah. For boundaries with like personal life, again, like I get so busy during the week that on the weekends I've really try to say no to something unless I love it or it's a really good friend or family, or you know what I mean? Because I don't want to spend my weekends running around. I'm exhausted after the week. I need to recharge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also I would say I realized the hard way through life many times of like who I spend my time with. There are people out there, I don't waste time on people that don't, like when I leave, I'm like, oh, I feel defeated. I feel judged. I feel, I just feel icky. I don't have time for that. Like we all are so busy. We barely have time to hang out with friends sometimes anyway. But like I make a point if I'm going to hang out with somebody or spend time with somebody that I leave and I feel seen, supported, cared for as I am doing for them. Yeah. Right. So it's like, I don't just hang out with people to hang out. Like, no, it has to be someone I really care about.
Yeah, you said something so important there. That time, that someone that cares much about you as you care about them and about yourself.
Yes.
Whatever that might look like, whether it's your well-being in your work, your well-being in your personal life, all the things, that's so important because that time you can't give back. And it's hard when you're first starting a company because you have this fear of missing out on an opportunity. And I had to have a good, close kind of work friend pull me back a little while back and be like, I know you're building this thing. You don't want to miss out on things, but you're just frenetic right now. And people don't know your audience doesn't know for sure what you want from them because you're just trying to grab at all these things. And I was completely spent. And it took that person to kind of jar me and be like, oh yeah, I got to get back on track here and measure what it is that is actually filling my cup versus depleting. And sometimes you have to show up and do things that we don't, love. But but there's those spaces and those time, but those people piece and where you have choices and knowing the value of that is so important. I think that goes really nicely into taking care of our emotional health, mental health, as much as our physical health. The kind of people we spend with have an effect on that. You've talked about curveballs, that's in the title of your book. Those affect us. So talk to me about your emotional, mental, physical health journey.
Yeah. I mean, if you're open, I'll give two examples. Pretty intense examples of how I have grown as a person and how I've approached things differently. So I wrote about these both extensively, pretty detailed in my book, but the short version is like 20 years ago. So I was my early 20s. I was studying Spanish in South America, and I ended up getting drugged and raped by my Spanish professor there and left alone in an abandoned house. Like I woke up on a dirty mattress on the floor. There was no other furniture there. Like it was bad. And I woke up alone. I kept trying to get out. I was like getting electrocuted by this door. They have these weird like metal garage-ish doors. So I finally escaped. Wow. And obviously was probably so traumatized because that was by far the worst thing that had ever happened to me up to that point. Yeah. And I was such a good girl that I did. It was now morning time and it was school time. So I literally took a taxi back to school, not back. I took a taxi to school in the same clothes I had on the day before. And I went and I had to see his face. And I mean, honestly, you guys, like, I didn't tell anyone for 20 years, not my parents, not a friend. I didn't tell anyone at the school. Like, so at showing, going through trauma and how are you healing or dealing with it? I didn't at all. I shoved it so far down, locked it, threw away the key and pretended like it didn't happen. Probably my, being was just trying to protect me because it was, so horrible. Right.
Yeah.
So
right.
Then, at the end of 2023, so very recently, really a few months ago, I had been in a lawsuit for 2.5 years. I was getting sued for millions of dollars, and I was having to defend myself against all these just ridiculous claims. I mean, I've never experienced anything so horrible. And that was literally the lowest, by far the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life, even worse than being assaulted, because I was like being assaulted day after day after day. I was heavy. I was depressed. It was like soul crushing and just horrible, literally fighting for your life, like defending you as a person, and I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. My kids were like, Mommy, when are we losing our home? Mommy, here's $12. You need it more than I do. I mean, it was real bad. And, I was waking up covered in hives, really horrible mental health. And I remember one morning I woke up it was like probably a weekend, woke up before my family did. I walked downstairs and I remember texting a girlfriend who's a therapist. And I was like, I'm not okay. I need help. Like I was so bad. And she's like, I got you. And so it was at that point that I asked for help and I started relying heavily on a therapist. But I also really at that point started being like, okay, you're literally in hell right now. That's a chapter of the book, Hell. I started looking around at my life, like how am I spending my time? What habits am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Because what is draining my energy that I need to get rid of immediately because it is not serving me right now more than ever. And what, is doing better. So like drinking, I mean, it was just, getting me in this, sitting and having a few glasses of wine really was not helping my mental health at that point. It was bad anyway. I needed to get rid of that. I needed to go move my body, get out in the sunshine, get some fresh air, do the simple things to make me feel somewhat okay again and dig out because it was really, really horrible. And at that point I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to live anymore. It was so horrible. So it's like with these two situations from doing zero, just shoving it down to now, these both made me feel powerless. Both situations did, right?
Yeah.
But now as a 40-year-old woman, I know myself and I knew I wasn't okay. And I knew I had to like fight to get out. I had to fight for myself,
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting how those two things, I'm sure the more recent one had to trigger the feeling of being assaulted. I mean, it's the mind and what the nervous system picks up as being synonymous is so interesting. Yes. It's such an interesting journey. And so bringing all those things back to surface, but also making you reckon with them, it's exhausting. And you have to create space to have the energy to do that. So many times those experiences do force you to really take stock and like, I need every bit of energy for my health, for my well-being that I can manufacture right now. So anything that's not serving that has to go.
You're saying no. Yes.
Yeah, you're saying no, period, no exclamation point, because it just becomes even more non-negotiable. And I think, unfortunately, it takes those hard-hitting things to make us do that. But really, that's a practice that we owe ourselves to have all the time. But I want to thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that. And I also want to get on another thing. That good girl mystique that is out there that girls carry so heavily from an early age.
Right.
This expectation, this narrative that's out there, and not feeling safe to say what's actually happening, to be your authentic self, the fear of the stigma, the shame, and all of those things that come up when you are assaulted like that, when someone in power takes advantage of you. and but you just keep rolling on because you don't want to disrupt the mystique or the stigma or the shame because you're the good girl.
Yep.
And I mean, it is, and it's one of those major issues we have to continue unpacking for women to create a safe place for women to be all the time and create narratives as well with kids when they're very young, that men in power positions don't get to a point where they believe this is something they have a right to, that there is an understanding that is bad and that is not okay. And there's no excuse for it. But these things start with kids. And so, you know, as a mom now, I'm sure this impacts how you talk to your boys about how to exist in the world and how to show up in the world so that they have the information from their mom, how to treat women, how to treat themselves, you know, because so much of that is this, there's so much in different cultures. It's more so that this patriarchy and machismo and all these things that exist, that these, I mean, there's so many, we could have I've talked about this many times. We could have our own show on all of the stigmas to unpack. We could. But those things force you into this stuffing, this place of compartmentalizing. And, you know, you've kind of, through this next experience that your nervous system felt like mimicked that again, all these things come boiling up to the surface. And so my point being in that, ladies, we've got to deal with this stuff. You reached out, you got help, you got a therapist, but it's having these conversations and talking about these topics unapologetically is how we change the narratives for women and create safety for women. So thank you for doing that. You didn't have to bring that up today. That was a choice, and it's going to help somebody out there feel like, wait a minute, I am not alone in this. And also, yes, we have to talk about this. There is no shame to be had. And
take our power back. We need to take our power back and get rid of shame and guilt. It wasn't your fault. Stop telling ourselves that, like, enough. And it's like, you don't need to go write a book about it or go on a podcast about it or shout it from the mountaintops. But at the very least, what you need to do is make peace with yourself and get rid of the shame and guilt and and heal yourself. At the very least, you owe that to yourself.
Yes. And whatever way feels healing for you, that feels healing and healthy and just brings that all together for you because you deserve it, and get rid of all this garbage about whatever narrative you heard about, because the other problem that you have is girls and women are given all this pressure of how we show up, being too pretty, how we dress, all this. No.
Oh yeah. We just can't win.
Men and boys need to be taught to behave themselves and act honorably. That's it.
Exactly.
You know, and be responsible for their own character. So these things, I mean, I feel very passionately about this because I've seen this and heard these stories. I've seen this happen. I've had my own experiences in a different way over time. And it's just like, no, we got to change these. Yes. And it's
and even I was in Dallas recently and I spoke at a conference about these things. And I literally, after I spoke, I went to the restroom and because I had the nervous peas and I was like in the bathroom, and 3 women literally just in the bathroom came up to me and were like, thank you for sharing. Something similar happened to me. I mean, 3 women. It makes me angry that there are so many women and men. I've even been on podcasts where it's a male host and he's like, actually, something similar happened to me. And it took me years to tell my wife, to tell my family, right? It's all of us. But like, it is so sad that is a reality, but we can take our power back. We can heal. And if you choose to share your story, then do it. Yeah. If it's you, if you just are sitting, writing it down, you know, getting it out on a piece of paper and you throw it up, ball it up and throw it away. Yeah. Like, great. If that's what you need, or if you need a therapist, or if you want to talk to a family member or friend, like there's a million different ways to do it. And you need to do what you feel comfortable with. Right. Yeah. But you have to do the work, because it's not just, it won't go away. It never will go away, but you can move past it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you can create awareness and healing and removing the shame and the stigma and the forgiveness. And I'm glad you brought up the men thing. I mean, my husband was sexually abused as a child, and had to overcome that. It's again, those people in power positions. So, and, so it's not just disrupting the dynamic women here, it's disrupting this dynamic. And you see it happens time and time again throughout the world, using power and using that as a weapon. It's horrid. And this, you have to,
it really is.
Yeah. So it's talking about, yes, the healing, get the help you need, get the help you deserve, you have a right to. And, because that's so powerful. So because it will come out. I mean, you had another disruptive, traumatizing experience bring this all to surface. But if that didn't happen, something along the way was going to, these things are going to bubble up in some way. Your body can't carry that first, and it'll run out of room. It'll start showing up in opportunistic ways.
Illness.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. And that's such a tragic, but a very more likely example than we want to realize that's happening out there. So I appreciate your sharing and being willing to have that conversation. How we support, and you just did this by how you're doing. You do this in the work you do right now, in speaking engagements, book, podcast, showing up and making time to be with your girlfriends, but supporting ourselves and other women in living unapologetically. Talk to me about your journey with that.
Yeah. I've always been the nice girl. I have been, had the mean girl thing go on from elementary school, then middle school, then high school. Then when I was in my 30s, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in my mid 30s. This still happens. I've had to work through that. But it's just finally saying like, enough. I'm not going to put up with that kind of stuff. I deserve better. I know who I should be around. Right. And that I want to spend my time with those people that are lifting me up. And really, also, I think through all of this journey and really writing my book, it's just encouraging people, giving people permission to be unapologetic, be real, be vulnerable, be like, I'm a hot mess. I'm trying my best though. And you want to be a hot mess with me? And if you actually, like as women, we look around and we see these people on Instagram that it took like 700 pictures to get that little picture that she posted. She looks so perfect and she makes the rest of us feel like crap. Yeah. And it's like, I'm sorry, but I hate everything about that. Like I usually go on social media and cry and like, be like, oh my God. And then people are like, they're like, oh, thanks for just saying it and being real. Like, why do we feel the need to be perfect? That is so lonely and ridiculous. It's not true. Those people are so fake. You don't want to be friends with them anyway, right? Yeah. It's like being real. Then you will actually find your tribe and find true connection with people that if you can be honest and open and say, this is what I'm struggling with, or, hey, this is what I'm celebrating. It's not all like bad. We're sitting complaining about everything. Like it should be good and bad, but you are able to be seen and heard and feel like you have someone to listen to if needed, right?
Yeah. I love that. Seen and heard and feel, celebrating the wins as well as the tough times, but celebrating those wins together and lifting each other up as we do it. You hit on something so important. This talking point has become over time the one that I'm getting more and more passionate about, because if we're going to make a change for women, we must do it together. We must quit seeing each other as the competition. We must lift each other up as we rise. We must get rid of the scarcity mindset. I mean, perfection is not attainable. It's not realistic. It's a bone we've been thrown to keep us off track and keep us in line to what powers that be want us to be, because if they like the power dynamic. But if we're really going to make this a safe place for women to exist in the world, we've got to do it together. We don't have to all get along. We're not going to like everybody, but we can still be supportive. We can be
absolutely.
But you can't do that for another one until you have done that with yourself. And so many times what I've learned to do, and I have not perfected this, but what I'm learning to do is when I feel myself getting judgmental, especially about a woman, I'd like get curious instead. Start asking, why is she doing this? What is the reasoning behind this? There's more to this story. Yeah. What is the expectation she's trying to live under? Those kinds of things. And then that takes away, there's something here to this story. And hopefully,
oh yeah,
she can get to a place, whatever it is, that she's feeling whole, authentic, and healthy, however that looks for her. But trying to unpack it that way has helped me a lot because, and like I said, this is something I still have to like move myself and sometimes force myself into, especially when
think nice thoughts.
Exactly. Or just, think about the whys behind this. She has a story. Yes. Something led her to this point. And it's, so it's just like, but it's that unapologetically knowing how to show up for yourself enables you to unapologetically show up for others. And that's an invitation within itself. When women see other women living that way, it's like, oh, I want to do that too.
I can do that. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
I think that's so important. Talk to me about that. How do you make room for the girl? You talk about the girlfriend time, the brunch time being important. I love that. How do you create time and space for that in this busy season that you're in?
Well, for me personally, I've learned that, I try to sneak in lunches because those are a little bit easier for me when my kids are at school. And since I own my company, it's like I make my own schedule, right? So if I can kind of plan those out. So that's, back in the day, people were like, let's go to happy hour. I'm like, that's the worst time ever for me. It just really is like, no, I'm like, how about lunch? So like, I've learned that, but scheduling out, I have a lot of busy friends and we'll be like, okay, so we'll get our calendars out. We're just pre-scheduling some of these like a ways out. I started, I think it was like late 2018 2018. I started, there's this really cute wine bar in town and I got to know the owners really well and I adore them. And so I was like, hey, I don't even know why I did it. I think I just wanted to meet nice women and go drink wine close to my house and support this little wine bar. It's adorable. Yeah. So now I do like monthly, it's called Women Who Wine. And it's really just it's not a networking group. It's literally just be a nice woman, come meet other nice women and drink wine. And that's it. And get out of the house.
Great.
And it's like all age ranges. Some women work, some don't, some are married, some aren't, some have kids, some don't. I mean, it's like the best. I've met freaking amazing women. And it's like, some have been coming for years. Some are new every time. And it's just what I hear over and over is like, I just have a hard time making friends and meeting nice women. I'm like, well, you're at the right place. So I just created that because when I moved here, I didn't maybe know as many people. So now, now I've found my tribe in this town I live in and, have really amazing friends. But again, like I have to say too, though, if you're out doing things in life, which I'm sure all of us are, like there will be people who want you to fail and just want you to fall flat on your face. There's always people out there. And the more you're out chasing, they say the haters will come more. Right.
Yeah.
And it's
they
like,
feel threatened.
They do. And they like seeing you play small. They want to see you fail. And honestly, sometimes like the people that you might get the biggest pullback from or pushback from is maybe a really close family or friends, like some of your best and closest family, because they're used to seeing you this certain way. Right. And then you're changing and growing and maybe that makes them uncomfortable or maybe it shines a light on some of their insecurities or whatever. But it's like, that we have to be really aware of that. And, I luckily have not had any close family personally, but I know people that have. Yeah. And maybe you don't tell that person your dreams anymore. Like you don't share that side of your life because you don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear them tell you that you're not going to do it or it's stupid or whatever, or if you need to spend less time around them or whatever, like that's actually okay. And I know it's really hard. It's very hard, especially with family and close friends, but it's your responsibility to put yourself around people that make you feel good and loved.
Yeah. Yeah. Your responsibility and seeing who you can trust. and who
Absolutely.
has earned that trust. And sometimes these don't even have to be things you're super outwardly you don't have to have this big moratorium or discussion necessarily. You're just a little more mindful. I'm not discouraging communication, but it doesn't always have to be like, you're just a little more mindful of what you share and what you say, knowing whether they can be trusted with that, or in a season of their life, they can handle that. So those are really good examples. But I love what you're doing with the wine bar. That is a great example of living unapologetically and inviting other women to. And that is just such a beautiful example of just that inclusion piece, because it is hard, especially as we get older. Like I'm 54. Yeah. I've lived all over the country. We've moved a lot. So I have learned, and luckily I'm an extrovert, but still, even for me, it's like another move. I gotta go find more friends. And I have friends all over the country that I've made through the years. So I'm very fortunate, because I do have a lot of great relationships all over the place. I get to talk to amazing women in this job all the time. But even for me, being invited into something is so meaningful, and you just never know what that means to someone, to give them a place to walk into where they know they're wanted, and they know they're invited and they're welcomed. I think that's just such a beautiful, it doesn't have to, you said this earlier, it's so simple things that we do that you just never know the impact they're going to have. It doesn't always have to be these grand gestures. So thank you so much for that. So good.
Yes.
So good. The importance of setting and coming back to your why and your values and everything you do. I would have to think that this really informs the boundaries you set, the expectations you have for yourself, your self-care. So talk to me about that why and values piece in your life.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, I could easily get lost in building a company, right? And I think when you hear of these really successful companies and people, right? It's like, I don't want to look back on my life and say, oh, well, my company is super successful, but to get there, I lost my health. I lost my physical and mental health. I lost my family. My kids hate me. I'm getting divorced. I'm miserable. To me, that's not what I want. And so if that's what, quote, success is, I don't want it. I actually, it's now that I'm in my 4th year of running this company, I feel like, and it's never perfect. It's never perfect, right? But I feel like I've found really good, I'm just aware of what I need. I'm aware of how to schedule my days out. Some are busier than others. Like last week, I had from Wednesday to Friday night, I was gone late every night at a different work thing, right? Well, one of those was the wine night. So whatever, it doesn't count. But then I had 2 work things, right? And then I was like, oh, I'm tired. Knew I only did it because I knew I was going into a pretty lazy weekend, and I planted flowers and like recharged, right? But you have to know, like, I love my life now, and I make it what I want. Like, why are we, so many of us, and I probably have more freedom than others because I own my own company, but so many of us feel like we're on a runaway train of life. Like, oh, the kids are in this and that, which that's a whole nother level of craziness. We all know this.
It is.
But like for that specifically, if you find yourself as a family, like miserable, and your kids been doing the song, they don't even like that sport anymore. You're like hate spending every weekend, the whole weekend at whatever tournaments, then maybe make a change, or maybe play on a little, bring it down a level. Like we actually we have to create our lives. So it's like, I don't want to be on my deathbed and be like, well, everyone else had control over my life and I didn't. No, I have control over my life. If I'm not living a good life, that's on me, and I need to change it and get rid of things. Like, so many of us, like, I just hear all these moms like, oh my gosh, it's so crazy. And it makes me sad because they're losing themselves as a woman. They're just, that's all they become as mom. And mom is the most important job ever, right? like, you still can be happy and fulfilled while being a mom, while being a woman, while being busy.
You can't lose yourself in it. And I think that's what happens. You said it's such an important thing here. We have choices. That doesn't mean they're easy choices, but we have to be accountable for the choices we make for the life we're living. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because we do have choices within, and so, okay, where is the choice, and how can I make it? What's getting in the way of me making it? Making that list of things that drain you versus fill you up. Drain your kids, fill them up. Drain your partner, fill them up. If you're in an issue, if you're in an unsafe relationship, what can you do to make a choice? Yeah. Where do you need to get help from? And I bring that up because some people are like, well, I don't have a choice. It's dangerous for me. That can be true in those extreme, difficult situations. Absolutely. But on a day-to-day for women, we have to quit just throwing up the towel and living out of society's expectations and start making choices for ourselves, which this goes nicely into living out of our own expectations versus others. You've laid that out really well, but you've had your own journey with this. You talked about early on being the good girl and how that expectation that you were subscribing to trapped you for so many years emotionally, where you didn't feel safe being honest and sharing things, the traumatic things that happened to you. And, now, talk about blowing expectations out of the water. You started a company in March of 2020, a construction company, where there's no way you could have known what was coming with supplies and demand and all those kinds of things. But you're also a woman in this business that you don't see very much, and doing and creating that and building that. So you have and through this journey you've been on, you have found a way to live out of your own expectations versus others. So talk to me about that kind of that metamorphosis of becoming and moving into that space.
Yeah, I think, I've grown in, and I've done a lot of work on myself, and I really truly can say I truly love myself. I know myself. I know what I need. I know what I like. I know what I don't like, and it hasn't always been that way, but I really do. And I'm very comfortable and confident in my skin, and it's like a lot of, I go to different conferences and things, and people always talk about, and I know this is very common. So that's why I'm going to bring it up, is like, people like, the horrible things you say to yourself, and you're just, mean to yourself, and the negative self-talk, which I know is massive. But I always sit there and I'm like, I really have gotten to a point, I'm not sitting there in my head beating myself up. Like I appreciate, and I know and love myself, like flaws and all. Yeah. And I like make fun of myself for the things that are ridiculous about myself, but I love it and I embrace it. But it's like, you really have to do the work on yourself to figure these things out so that you can I'm just me. And that's, I think, maybe why I do things. I always want to do right and do them the right way and be positive and kind and helpful. Right. And that's why my company stands out. But I'm just me, and I'm honest also. And so I think my clients really respond because, like, they always deal with me, and they know me, and they know just I'm genuine and I'm real and I'm honest. And this is what you see is what you get. Like, I'm not some fake person out there trying to like act one way and I'm really another way. Like, this is just me, take it or leave it. And that's just how I am in life at this point.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you've taken these journeys, these experiences, and gotten to this space, which is exactly the space you want to be in. And I think that's so beautiful because it hasn't been easy, and so I love this example because you're an example of what is possible when you're willing to take those steps and do the work, because this isn't easy. Yeah. This is hard.
It's never easy or finished. No. Like, it doesn't stop, but you need to keep growing and you want to be a better person, right?
Absolutely. It's an evolution. And I had to get to a point where I realized I was so focused on outcomes. I was missing the journey, and like, there's no end game here. I will continue to evolve and learn and grow and figure things out about myself. And that's exactly once I got to that point, then it made it easier, which goes nicely into this accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. You just talked about how you were able to do that and have been able to do that. Talk to me about that transition from moving out of the negative self-talk, moving out of the good girl syndrome into this living out of your own expectations and embracing all of these layers.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there are times when it pops back up, but I if I say no to something, I always feel the need to over explain or, and then I'm like, why are you doing that? Stop. Yeah. It's they don't even care. Just say, no, I'm sorry. I have prior commitments that night. And if your prior commitments was you laying on the couch resting, then great. They don't need to know that. And that's it for you. Do you know what I mean? We have to not just give away our time, but I don't know. I feel grateful that I've stepped into this, and I am very self-aware and I know who I am, what I need. Right. But I still struggle with things like if I start feeling drama from another mom or whatever, I hate drama so much. I can't even handle it. I hate negativity. I'm like, I don't have time for that. I don't care. Why? And then I get I'm in the shower, washing my hair, telling them off, having this conversation, violently washing my freaking hair. It's oh my God, you're insane. Stop. They're probably not thinking about you. And you're in here losing, getting your heart rate all up, being a crazy person. Right. Yeah. It's I don't know, but I've had situations, where I've had to say, I don't want that in my life. And it's really awkward and not fun, but I do it because I don't want anything in my life that I don't love right now. And I'm not going to spend time doing something that I feel someone else is making me do, or that I feel pressured to do. It's someone else's expectation. I refuse. I refuse.
Yeah. I love that. That's so good. I mean, I think and it's just so important to be able to laugh at ourselves and for those things that we didn't love, those seasons we didn't love, those traumatic things that have happened to you that you don't love, you find a way to get to that happened. I'm going to take this neutral stance of it was terrible. It was difficult. It was hard. And I learned some things about myself. I can't change the past, but I can move forward from this. I can determine, I can determine that I'm going to be really mindful of what I give who I give my time to from now on.
Absolutely.
And protect that and live that out the best that I can. And I'm going to give myself grace, and I'm going to be kind, and I'm going to, because then when you can give yourself grace, you can give others grace so much easier. And for those that don't want to exist that way, then you don't have, I think as women, sometimes we feel like we have to get along with everybody all the time. Yeah. And be respectful, but not everybody has to be your best pal, your best friend.
Exactly.
And not everybody is for you. Be kind, be honoring, like I said earlier, about living unapologetically and supporting other women. Yes. And also realize that there are people that just aren't in the same space as you, and you don't have to take up your time if they're depleting your energy, and you're not going to change them. People have to decide they want to be different.
For sure.
So I think that it's, I think it's just so powerful the way you've been able to go on this journey and embrace your layers, meet them where they are, and be really mindful about how you spend your time. And this is a curiosity question. So what's your background in construction? Why construction? Because this is, again, not a route we see a lot of women go. So talk about that and how that's been moving into a field where you're the minority most of the time, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I ended up here. I never thought I'd be in construction or own my own business. I'm just going to throw that out there. So I have a Spanish degree and a broadcast journalism degree. I thought I wanted to be the next Barbara Walters and be, in broadcasting. And then I found out they make 20 grand and work nights and weekends. And I was like, oh, that sounds horrible. So I'm from a small town in South Dakota, but I moved to Colorado to do my internship. My dad had lived out here at the time. And so he had a friend that was a radio DJ. So I did it in radio. Okay. And then I ended up staying in Denver. So that's kind of how I got out here. But then, so 6 months later, the college loans start coming due. I'm like, I need a job. So I literally took a job being like a temp receptionist in downtown Denver. And honestly, so you put a small town South Dakota girl, like I'm from 11,000 a town of 11,000 people. I went down one-way streets the wrong way a lot. I was like, what is this place? This is insane. What are these streets? It was bad. And thank God I didn't die. And but then I met, so the boss there was like, hey, you need to meet my sister. Her company's hiring. So I ended up taking a job there, and that was trade shows and experiential marketing. So I worked there for like 5 or 6 years. Then I was like, in my gut, I was like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything worthwhile with my life. So I knew when I know I need a change, like, oh, it's coming, but I'm like, oh gosh, I got to figure it out because I can't go back now. Like mentally, I just can't. And so then I decided I wanted to be a teacher. So I quit my job, got my master's in education, and became a high school Spanish teacher for 10 years. So again, complete shift, totally different. Yeah. And then luckily, at the end of 2019 was my last year teaching. Thank God, before COVID. That would have been,
oh my word.
Can't even imagine. Yeah. So 10 years in, I had a great run at it. It was fantastic. Loved it. But the last year was really brutal. Like one day a kid called me an effing waste of space. And I was like, okay. You know, and I was like, I don't love this anymore. So I knew I had to move on again. But at this point I'm like, well, what am I going to go do? You know, I'm like, no prospects, nothing. I don't even have a clue. So I applied for all these jobs. No one called me at all. It was like crickets. I'm just like, okay. And then the only job I got offered was as an office manager for a different construction company. So that actually got me into commercial construction. And I cried a lot because I got like trained like 2 days and it was just horrible. I didn't know what I was doing. Got thrown into this really disorganized company and was like, oh my God. So worked there and I then had some conversations, decided that I saw a niche in the Denver market with this concrete scanning that we do. Yeah. And, you know, there's a lot of big companies that do it, but they maybe aren't doing it well, or they're like weeks out before they get on a site. Gotcha. So I was like, if you can do it well and get on a site in, 2-3 days. Yeah. Okay. Well, now we've been over doubling every year. So I would say the market has responded, right? So, and then I ended up down the road a little bit doing core drilling, which is, it's the circular cutting and floor wall on concrete. So if you think like a high rise building, we're coming in and cutting all these holes for electrical and mechanical companies. Right. And then they come in and put whatever it is, I don't even know, they put in there.
That they need to put in there.
Yeah. And so that I added on to my services just because clients, a few were like, well, you're here. Can you just do a quick core? And I was like, oh, fine. I'll buy a little core rig and throw it in the van. And now I do like 6 times the core. I mean, I do insane amounts of core drilling. So that it's like, well, I saw there was a need there and that's where my clients were taking it. So I guess that's where we're going. Right. Yeah. So totally ended up randomly, never thought I would own my own company. And I love this field. I love construction. I love my employees, my customers, and I love owning my time. So I trust that life led me here for a reason. And I had a lot of twists and turns and totally reinvented myself numerous times. Right. But I learned from it all and it made me who I am.
Yeah. That's the key. You learn from it all. You had these different seasons. You took the different roads. But I think I want to hit on something here. You trusted your intuition. And so many times as women, we don't. We don't trust our instincts.
Yeah, we need to
listen to that inner voice. And we stay in situations that drain us, that are harmful to us in an abundance of different ways, or that we just don't love. And you listened to that intuition and it led you to this space. So I wanted to focus on that for a second, because that is powerful. And, and this is the kind of things how things can unfold when we trust ourselves. So thank you for sharing that. That was really good. Thank you so much. I love that. In summary, in Living Out Feel, Finding Empowerment, Embracing Layers, which is the name of our podcast, talk to me about how that has affected your relationship with yourself, as well as your relationship with other people.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really just embracing the layers. You get to know them and embrace them. Like I was joking to my friend the other day. I'm like, I don't know why anyone hangs out with me. I'm so boring. Like, because I just go to bed early and I'm like, oh, I just like to stay at home when I don't have, I could go to this, but half the time I like end up staying home. It's like, and I know that about myself. And I'm like, this is me. And she's like, shut up. We love you. It's like embracing and knowing those layers and just saying, yep, this is me, hot mess and all. Right. And know that maybe some of your layers are more defined and more like you're more in tune with, and maybe others you're still like just figuring it out. Right. And just starting to foster and learn about yourself. Because as you go through different times in life, different things will come up or bring up different emotions. Right. So it's just all learning about yourself, which is really cool. I think, and it's just empower, we all, I truly believe as women, no one does as much as we do. Like men, I'm sorry, but we run circles around men. Like they have no freaking clue what we all accomplish in a day. Right. Yeah. And it's like, empower yourself to be like, I am so amazing. I love myself. I know I am. I just like love yourself and it's okay to say that about yourself and not, no one's going to judge you. Like you have to know your value. You have to be like, this is who I am, world, and I'm confident and I love myself and I got this, right? Like we need to empower ourselves to just be ourselves and like love ourselves and be, put your true self out to the world. Cause that's what the world needs is you. You're the only you.
Yes. And knowing your value, because people, if you want to be treated like you're someone with value, they're going to look at how you treat yourself. And you're going to inform in a lot of ways whether they're going to treat you with value by how you treat yourself. And I love how you talk about like all those, we all have those quirky things about us, but guess what? That's who I am. And I value myself and I love myself anyway. So really good stuff on that. Thank you so much. That's just so good. So good. We are down to the rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Sleep, reading, taking a walk with my chocolate lab, jumping on trampolines with my kids. I'm obsessed, or jumpy castles. I love those. And going out to brunch.
Oh, good. I love this. I love the jumping castles too. Those are fun.
I do too. So great. Before we were moms though.
Exactly. It's harder to get up now.
Oops.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
And if I jump I've had 3 kids. If I jump too much, other problems happen. Exactly. Yep. You said it. Yep. That's what it is. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Oh, passionate. I want to feel joy. Hopefully I can do that. Passionate joy, peace, fulfillment, and I don't know I want to be making memories. That's my goal, making memories. It's not one word, but
I love that though. That's really good. Cause that's what we should be wanting to do every day. That's that being present in the moment, making the memories with the people and places we love and care about. Chelsea, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for your honesty, your authenticity, and vulnerability and sharing your journey with us today and having this conversation with me. Let people know how they can follow you. And then this will be available on our resources page at embracinglayers.com, ladies. So don't worry, you'll have access to all these resources, but I want to give you a moment to talk a little bit about, we've learned that you're in construction, but you have a book, you do public speaking, you are going to be starting a podcast soon. So talk about where people can find all those things.
Yeah. So I think the best way to kind of find out more or connect with me would be my website. It's just chelseahusum.com. I have a freebie on there. It's called Your Unapologetic Life Workbook. It's just pops right up. And so these are things, I made it really fun and apologetic, kind of and sassy. But these are things that if I kind of feel that I'm in a funk, I really hone back in on. So grab that. That's free. My book, and then like social links and all that are on my website as well. My book is called Real Vibes Only, Unapologetic Confessions of a Hot Mess Mompreneur. And that's on Amazon, but you can read more about it on my website as well. So thank you.
All right. Oh, love all of that. Thank you so much, ladies. Check all that out. That's all going to be really, really good stuff and really helpful stuff. I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for who you are in the world and how you show up as yourself authentically and supporting others in doing so and using these resources you have to help other women do that as well. And know that we're worth it, that we're worth the time and that we're, and I think that's the biggest takeaway today, listeners. Remember, you're worth the time. Look at your time. How are you spending it? Who are you giving it to? Is it filling you up? Think about those things this week and value yourself enough to take that kind of look it's going to change over time. So check it every so often. It doesn't stay the same. You heard Chelsea share about all of her different seasons. I've had many too. So check in with yourself every so often. When you feel that angst, listen to it. Trust that inner knowing. All right. Chelsea, thanks again so much for your time today. Feel Podcast
Thank
audience.
you so much.
You bet. Oh, absolutely. Have a great week. Check out that resources page on embracingleaders.com. You don't want to miss this, but thanks so much for being with us today.